Mock my assistant. Mr. Malfoy, tell me, who gave you that courage? Voldemort's voice was low, dangerous. He did it deliberately. He wanted to break Malfoy, strip away the boy's arrogance and impulsiveness, and replace them with fear. Scars or not, he thought, better for this destined Death Eater to grow timid than remain an arrogant, vain, posturing brat. Filthy little snake, you've sullied the greatness of pureblood, Voldemort thought, his temper flaring. Chapter 47. Snape versus Voldemort. You shouldn't have done that, Quirrell. At the dining table, Flitwick spoke with concern. I understand you were protecting Percy, but you may have gone too far. The shrewd Ravenclaw head of house had already pieced together why Voldemort had lashed out. If Quirrell hadn't acted, the hot topic among students would be Percy's remark, "Damn Slytherins," rather than Professor Quirrell's sudden attack. The resentment of an entire house was more than a fifth-year Percy could bear. I chose my own assistant. Naturally, it's my duty to protect him, isn't it? Voldemort said calmly, cutting into his steak. Yes, but Flitwick's words were cut short by a furious shout. Quirrell, how dare you? It was Snape, sweeping into the hall in his billowing black robes like an oversized bat, his first words a direct accusation. He disregarded classroom protocol. I didn't deduct points from Slytherin. Consider that my mercy, Voldemort replied, unflinching. And that's your excuse for using magic to attack a student? Striding to the center of the hall, Snape drew his wand. Let's see what you're capable of, other than pointing your wand at an 11-year-old. Oh, Severus, calm down, there's no... Flitwick tried to intervene, but Voldemort acted instead of speaking. Come then, Snape. I've been curious to see what you can do. With a sudden leap from the staff table, Voldemort landed lightly on the floor, wand ready, eager to test himself, with Snape as a worthy opponent. Expelliarmus! Snape gave him no time to settle. His wand flashed, the spell voiced, a sign that even in anger, his mind remained cold and calculating. The seasoned professors understood immediately and did not intervene. Instead, they cast wide-area shielding charms to protect the students. The disarming spell streaked toward Voldemort, but as he landed, he rolled to the side, slipping the spell effortlessly. Expelliarmus! Rising in one smooth motion, Voldemort lunged toward Snape's throat like a blade. Snap! Snape didn't move back. His wand flicked sharply, deflecting the spell harmlessly. A masterful shield charm combined with silent casting. Multi-cannon volley! From behind his shield, Snape unleashed another spell. Protego Maxima! Voldemort countered. A shimmering suit of spectral armor appeared, an advanced shield charm far beyond the ordinary. Bang, bang, bang! The spell impacts hammered the armor until it flickered and dissolved. Stupefy! Expelliarmus! This time, both struck simultaneously. The spells collided midair, flaring and bursting apart, Snape's magic scattering Voldemort's before surging forward, clearly showing his edge in raw power. After the exchange, neither pressed forward, both recalculating. Voldemort quickly assessed. Quirrell's magical strength and depth didn't match Snape's. Snape realized Quirrell was no easy target and would need to take the duel seriously. For Snape, it was about defending Slytherin's honor. He couldn't allow an outsider to harm a Slytherin student or tarnish the house's name. Percy's insult could no longer be punished, but defeating Quirrell here would restore Slytherin pride. The head of house has the upper hand? Didn't you see that last exchange? I've never seen the head this angry. Slytherin's sure to win. Professor Quirrell went too far. The head's in the right. The Slytherin students murmured among themselves, rallying behind Snape and trying to sway Voldemort with their chatter. At the other tables, it was a different story. The rest of the school, including the Weasley twins, stood firmly with Voldemort. They might chafe under their older brother's authority, but family was family, and right now, Professor Quirrell was defending him. Old grievances could wait. Quirrell needed their support. For others, it was simpler. Slytherin was already widely disliked, and Snape's reputation didn't help. Why not root for Quirrell? The two men themselves paid no attention to the crowd. Eyes locked, they readied for the clash. No one could say who struck first. Perhaps they moved at the same moment. But in an instant, spells ripped through the air. Whoosh, whoosh, bang, bang. They cast without a word, a mutual, unspoken agreement that only made the duel fiercer. Snape had the deeper reserves of magic, but Voldemort's instincts, those of a Dark Lord's lingering soul, let him hold the line. Step by step, they closed the gap, the danger rising with every pace. At this range, a single mistake could mean taking a hit, but the risk only made their skill more dazzling. The younger students couldn't follow the fine points, but upper years and professors stared in open awe. Only when 5 meters separated them did their pace slow. At this distance, a spell lands in the blink of an eye. No time to react, Lee Jordan muttered, somehow bold enough to play commentator. But Professor Quirrell's got the edge. Clean casting, sharp movement. A ripple of laughter passed through the crowd despite the tension. Hermione, hands clenched in her robes, turned to stare at the senior student. Even Harry glanced over from the fight. Brilliant, Jordan. Spot on, Ron said, beating his brothers to the praise. Thump! The commentary cut short, not silenced, but ended by the sight of Professor Quirrell hitting the ground. Only seconds after that blistering close-range exchange, Voldemort faltered at last. Snape's stronger magic and flawless silent casting had decided it. Stupefy! Snape seized the chance in the silence and throwing his full power into one finishing spell. As the red light streaked toward him, Voldemort's gaze flicked down and left, triggering a skill. Not Darkest Hour, but Linzuo Moment. Protego Totalum! Still on the ground, he fired the shield upward. The blue-green shimmer met Snape's stunning spell midair, canceled it out, and, though dimmer, hung suspended. Snape's eyes narrowed, studying the floating light. Holding magic in the air wasn't rare. Plenty of spells lingered naturally, like wand lighting, fire conjuring, a reinforced Protego, even the obstruction charm Voldemort had just used. But to leave it hanging without any drain at all, that was another matter entirely. Snape had heard the rumors of this talent, but seeing it in action was something else. Protego! 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 7 shimmering shields flared up in a row before Voldemort lowered his wand. Then, Stupefy! Volley of 1,000! Confringo! Expelliarmus! Blue and green light flared. 7 spectral shields spun into place, and a storm of offensive spells hung at his sides, poised to strike at his word. Merlin, how'd he do that? If all those went off at once, I thought he was losing, but it's the opposite. The stands buzzed again, Slytherins urging Snape to counter. Snape didn't move. He only watched, a faint, mocking smile tugging at his mouth. And then, without a sound, without a flash, he struck. The foremost shield rippled, pierced by unseen force. It didn't shatter, but it failed to stop the blow. Scritch, 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 scritch. 4 more shields were gashed deep. The 5th absorbed the last of it. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. He knew the spell at once, Sectum Sempra. Snape's own creation from his school days, a dark curse that left wounds no magic could heal. Voldemort's gaze flicked inward to his skill list, a flicker of regret passing through him. He couldn't use dark magic here, but then the regret eased. If he did, Snape, or worse, Dumbledore, might start asking the right questions. Professor Snape. McGonagall's voice cut through the air, sharp as steel. You know exactly what spell you just used. This ends now. Do not continue. Snape remained silent. Voldemort, too, said nothing. The students didn't grasp what had just happened, but the professors were visibly tense. A dark curse had been unleashed. Would the next step be an unforgivable? Voldemort doubted Snape would go that far, but he knew the man could. The killing curse, the one that ended Dumbledore's life. Could Snape truly have felt no hatred toward him? Impossible. That curse demanded a will to kill, a focused and burning desire. Even a master of occlumency might fool others. But could he fool himself? Did Snape hate Dumbledore? Very likely. Lily's death had tied itself to Dumbledore in ways Voldemort understood all too well. And even without that, a man who could invent a curse like Sectum Sempra as a student, Voldemort would never call him good. These thoughts flickered through Voldemort's mind in an instant. Their eyes locked, each reading the other's intent with startling clarity. Huh! Voldemort flicked his wand forward, sending a storm of spells hurtling towards Snape, a flood of magic meant to overwhelm. Swish, swish, swish! Snape countered with a volley of Sectum Sempra strikes before retreating, shield charms deflecting incoming curses with precise angles. Still, a few spells landed, mostly raw impact types like multi-cannon volley, the kind his body could withstand without serious injury. Meanwhile, Voldemort began stacking shield charms, layering them to protect against Sectum Sempra's deadly arcs. The duel's rhythm shifted. Distance opened between them. Where once it had been a test of speed, technique, and reflex, it now became a contest of sheer magical force. Snape displayed Sectum Sempra's ruthless precision. Voldemort revealed the bending, time-warping nature of his power. McGonagall's disapproval was clear, but she didn't know where to intervene. Then came their second major clash. Snape cast the curse aloud this time, sharpening Sectum Sempra's edge. Voldemort, abandoning lesser spells, wove in heavier, more dangerous magic. And then, a flash of red light. Beneath the sweeping arc of a phoenix's wings stood Albus Dumbledore. He bent at the knees, wand slicing upward. Tables and chairs near the duel lifted into the air, twisting and warping into two trants, each gripping a massive wooden shield. Back to back, they turned toward Snape and Voldemort. With a booming thud, the trants slammed their shields into the floor. A sudden rattle and crackle filled the room. They blocked every spell without a scratch. Snape and Voldemort finally broke their gaze, turning to the trants' unblinking eyes. "A splendid little exhibition duel," Dumbledore said, striding to the center. Deep red robes swirled around him, soft pointed hat atop his head. Arms spread wide in theatrical flourish. The elder wand in his hand twitched, and the trants returned to their original form, the long tables, though not without fresh gouges in the wood. "Perhaps the timing was less than ideal," he continued, "but I dare say it broadened everyone's horizons." He spoke as if nothing had happened, ignoring Snape's glare. Voldemort, ever the actor, inclined his head in a half-bow, like a performer accepting the audience's applause. "Let us give these two professors a warm round of applause for their display." The students didn't fully understand, but they clapped enthusiastically. The transfiguration alone was spectacular, and Dumbledore's power had awed them. Not just the students, Snape and Voldemort both felt the weight of it, and McGonagall, a master of transfiguration herself, knew just how extraordinary it had been. Amid the applause, Dumbledore gave a small bow to the students, like an actor exiting the stage. But when he turned to Snape and Voldemort, his eyes were unusually cold. "Come with me, you two, remarkable professors." Humor lingered in his voice, but neither man felt inclined to smile. Snape bristled. He had believed victory was within reach. Voldemort seethed. Dumbledore's display reminded him of the strength still ahead, making the future feel uncertain. Chapter 49. Draco Malfoy, Master of Drama. Before sitting down for lunch, Lucius Malfoy received word that his son had been beaten. His eyes widened in shock. Who would dare lay hands on his son, Draco, the sole heir of the Malfoy family, the pride of an ancient house? But his anger cooled instantly when he heard the name, Quirinus Quirrell. "Lucius, I'm going to Hogwarts. Right now. Merlin's sake, how dare that man Quirrell?" Narcissa Malfoy's voice trembled with tears as she rattled off her complaints. "I told him not to provoke the Maz, not to stir up trouble." Lucius roared, earning a nod of approval from his wife, though she clearly thought it insufficient. "If you'd met this Quirrell, you should have been harsher with him. It seems he—" Before she could finish, Lucius raised a hand to silence her. "I was talking about that dutiful little lackey, not my master," he thought with exasperation. "I'll handle this. You don't need to go. Draco isn't seriously hurt, just a bruise near his eye." Under her puzzled gaze, Lucius took up his cane, pausing. "Do nothing," he instructed firmly. "Every decision will be mine to make." The rare, solemn warning made Narcissa realize the matter wasn't simple. She swallowed her anger. "Draco's injury? Truly not serious?" "It's nothing. The report is accurate. Stay home and wait. I'll bring him to see you this weekend. It won't take long." He gave her one last reminder, pressed a kiss to Narcissa's forehead, and headed upstairs toward the study. The Malfoy study was a grand space, its shelves crammed with rows of magical tomes, some so rare they existed nowhere else in the wizarding world. But the books weren't his goal. Lucius approached a certain bookshelf layered with intricate enchantments. Among the neatly arranged volumes sat a scattering of small trinkets. Carefully dismantling the protective wards, he retrieved a ring, dark silver, its crown shaped into a coiled serpent with silver eyes. He slid it onto his finger, restored the enchantments, and left the manor. Instead of going straight to Hogwarts, he moved quickly between the homes of several old wizarding families, securing what he needed before finally making for the school. By the time he arrived, afternoon light was spilling through the castle windows. He neither sought Dumbledore nor checked on his son. His destination was the second-floor Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Bang! The door slammed open. Under the startled stares of several Ravenclaws, Lucius hurled a bundle of documents directly into Voldemort's face, startling him, though the Dark Lord caught the flicker of panic in Lucius's eyes. "You're dismissed, Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. By order of the board, find yourself another job." Lucius's voice cut through the room, furious, imperious, laced with scorn. The Ravenclaws froze. It didn't matter that it was their professor and a senior wizard being dressed down. None dared speak. The House of the Eagle had always prized self-preservation. Lucius Malfoy? Voldemort's gaze was icy. "The board has no such authority. Removing me requires the headmaster's signature. You assaulted a student in class. The board absolutely has that right." Lucius lunged to grab him, catching Voldemort slightly off guard. The Dark Lord sidestepped on instinct, then paused, lifting a hand to block him. Lucius's hand should have landed on his arm, but with a subtle shift, their palms pressed together for an instant. The serpent's head on the ring flickered faintly silver-white. A brush against his mind, delicate, deliberate. Not an attack, but an invitation. Voldemort hesitated, then opened the link. "Master, how should I proceed?" Lucius's voice sounded in his mind. "You're doing well. Keep the pressure on me. Draw Dumbledore into the fight." "Aren't you worried they'll actually dismiss you? Or is that what you want?" "Dumbledore won't allow it. It touches his authority. And I acted for Gryffindor's sake. He'll think of his reputation." Lucius kept up his outward show of aggression, now fully aware of his master's game. Force Dumbledore into a bind. As a board member, he was perfectly placed to help. A flawless plan. The Dark Lord's genius was returning. "I'll cooperate. I trust you won't hold it against me for throwing that paper in your face." Lucius began to pull back from the link, but Voldemort stopped him. "Draco needs discipline," the Dark Lord said before the connection could break. Lucius froze, his grip faltering. Voldemort covered the slip by pretending to break away. "You've spoiled him. As one of the next generation's pillars among the Death Eaters, he must grow strong, not soft." "I understand, Master." That Lucius's reply came instantly. "Before I knew when you'd return, I couldn't be too hard on him. He's already too visible. It draws attention. People are watching my family. I have to avoid trouble." "All trouble will vanish. We will prevail." With a sharp twist, Voldemort broke the grasp and severed the link himself. The Dark Lord will triumph, Lucius thought, though his face still burned with feigned outrage. Hidden from sight, he slipped the ring into his pocket. "I'll see Dumbledore at once. He owes me, and the board, an explanation." Lucius swept from the room without hesitation. "Back to your studies," Voldemort said sharply, as if Malfoy's visit had truly soured his mood. "I trust no one here wishes to end up like Draco." The Ravenclaws nodded quickly, bending over their books with exaggerated focus. What they were actually thinking, only they knew. Chapter 50. The Gryffindor faction, Malfoy's classroom tirade, and his shouting in the 8th floor corridor quickly became the talk of dinner. "Don't be afraid, Quirrell." It was rare for Professor McGonagall to sound reassuring. "The headmaster will stand by you, and the other professors will too. All the Malfoy family has is filth and the stench of gold. Don't fear him. Stand up to him," Professor Kettleburn put in, earning a sharp glare from McGonagall. "Best to be careful, Quirrell," Professor Flitwick warned. "Don't go stirring up trouble again for now." He suspected his pupil suffered from a chronic case of lionization, thinking and acting far too much like a Gryffindor. Faced with this chorus of conflicting advice, Voldemort only gave a wry nod, though he slipped Kettleburn a discreet thumbs up under the table. "Professor, the headmaster would like to see you." Percy appeared at the staff table, clearly thinking he bore good news. "The headmaster will fully support you. I asked him directly. He said so." "Thank you." Voldemort smiled, finished the last bite of his meat pie, and rose to go. "Professor Quirrell is amazing." Ron watched Quirrell leave, admiration shining in his eyes. "If I didn't know he was a Ravenclaw, I'd swear he belonged in Gryffindor." "He saved me," Harry said quietly, "at Gringotts." The remark drew surprised looks from everyone nearby. Harry's cheeks flushed. He'd always been naturally shy. "Tell us, Harry. You've never mentioned this before," one of the Weasley twins said, bounding over. "Yeah, maybe we've been wrong about Professor Quirrell. Come on, tell us, the other added. Even Hermione, usually too proud to socialize with those she deemed underachievers, slid her chair closer, eager to hear. It has to do with the Gringotts break-in, Harry stammered. The group leaned in, hanging on his every word. The Weasley twins punctuated his story with gasps and exclamations. Percy had drifted over too. Initially intending to intervene, he fell silent when he heard Quirrell's name, listening intently. It was just like today at lunch, Harry continued. Headmaster Dumbledore suddenly appeared and ended it all. When I opened my eyes, the ground was rushing up toward me. His head dipped, staring at the table. My face was this close to the floor when someone shouted, "Harry Potter! Accio!" "That's the summoning charm," one twin said. "Had to be Professor Quirrell, right?" Yes, it was him. Harry's cheeks reddened. It felt like something yanked me forward. Hagrid let go, I flew straight into the professor, and then he used a levitation charm to stop me. "Professor's incredible," Hermione blurted. Everyone turned toward her, making her self-conscious. She lifted her chin, pretending nothing had happened. "He's saved you twice then, hasn't he?" Ron asked. "Yes," Harry nodded. "Once when I was unconscious, Hagrid told me, and once I saw clearly. And afterward, he's the one who went shopping with me. That's when you met Malfoy, right?" "The professor saw him too?" Ron pressed. "Yes, I saw Malfoy's father through the window talking to him. Maybe the grudge started then. Maybe it was because of me." Harry looked down, guilt flickering across his face. He was always quick to blame himself. "No need to worry about the professor," Percy said suddenly, startling the twins. "Headmaster Dumbledore will protect him. He's done nothing wrong." "Of course," the twins said in unison, much to Percy's surprise. "And Percy," one added with a grin, "the professor protected you too." "Yes, at least you're not in trouble now," the other chimed in. Percy's face darkened. He clearly would never get a fully kind word from them. "All right, enough. Evening classes should get to class. The rest of you stop loitering in the hall," Percy said sharply, striding off. The twins watched him go, smirking as if they'd just won some secret victory. "The professor won't get into trouble, right?" Hermione asked softly. "Why do you care so much?" Ron shot back. "Trying to cozy up to a teacher again?" Hermione's face darkened instantly. She popped the last bite of sausage into her mouth, stood up, and walked away without another word. The twins exchanged a glance and burst into laughter at Ron's expense. That evening, first and second year Defense Against the Dark Arts classes met. When Voldemort entered, he almost mistook it for a Ravenclaw gathering. The students sat neatly, eyes bright and eager. Not at all typical for young Gryffindors. "Professor Quirrell, the headmaster won't expel you, will he?" Harry asked first, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "Of course not," Voldemort replied firmly. "Using magic to discipline students isn't exactly proper, but if you've read a history of magic, you'll know it isn't unprecedented." The students collectively exhaled in relief. They'd already heard about the Gringotts heist from the twins, which only increased their admiration for him. Battling dark creatures or saving Harry, both feats of daring and skill, made him a hero in Gryffindor eyes. "All right, first years, head to the classroom across the hall. Hufflepuff's sixth-year prefect, Gabriel Truman, will teach tonight. Treat him kindly. Don't be like the Slytherins." A ripple of laughter ran through the students. Ron shouted first, "We'd never do that," followed by a chorus of agreement. Even Hermione joined in with a bright, approving smile. "Looks like your lesson will be an easy one tonight, Truman," Voldemort said to his assistant, then called the second years over to start class. The evening lesson passed in a light, cheerful atmosphere. Voldemort was in an unusually good mood and even took time near the end to explain essay structure and writing techniques. Thanks to Hermione's earlier questions, he had started giving this guidance to all first years. "Professor Quirrell, could you teach me how to keep spells suspended in the air?" Hermione asked. It was a skill that couldn't be taught directly, so Voldemort declined with mild regret. Instead, he explained the concept of magical traits, how every wizard had unique characteristics they needed to discover for themselves. He offered examples: Dumbledore's mastery of transfiguration, his own ability to suspend magic midair, Snape's precise spell work. He explained that such traits could be tied to personality or natural magical talent, and they weren't set in stone. Though the students were a bit disappointed they couldn't learn the skill immediately, they were soon drawn into the theory. After all, who didn't want to be unique? No one was immune to the appeal. Even Truman, the sixth-year prefect, thanked him after class, saying he'd learned a great deal. Being able to share my knowledge, well, as a professor, that's what makes me happiest, Voldemort replied with a smile, bidding Truman and the young lions farewell. On his way back to the office, students greeted him one after another. Thanks to the Draco incident, he'd clearly won recognition among the student body, and even some Slytherins were treating him with greater respect. Their respect is one thing, he thought, but Gryffindor's acceptance, that's the real prize. Recalling Dumbledore's words at dinner, he felt a surge of almost uncontainable excitement. Don't be afraid, Quirrell. As long as I'm here at Hogwarts, your position as Defense Against the Dark Arts professor is secure. That's my promise to you. When Dumbledore had peered over the rims of his half-moon spectacles and spoken with such gravity, Voldemort had felt the intoxicating thrill of having infiltrated the enemy's ranks. If the man across from him hadn't been the greatest white wizard alive, he might have dropped to his knees and celebrated on the spot. England's wizarding world was divided into many factions, though only a few were widely recognized. The most famous were the Order of the Phoenix, the Death Eaters, the Ministry of Magic, and the Pureblood families. Muggle-born wizards had no factions, and in the wizarding world, they were rarely the protagonists. The Order of the Phoenix embodied Gryffindor loyalty with nearly all its core members, both the veterans and the younger generation, coming from Gryffindor. Winning their trust was vital for Voldemort to hide his true identity, and doing so brought him rare satisfaction. Fueled by this, he decided to begin studying Secrets of Time that very day. He approached forbidden books with extreme caution, not only because of their titles, but because of the memories still lingering in his fractured soul. If one were to mark the turning points in his life with colors, reading the band Decoding Advanced Dark Magic would be marked with a pitch-black tag. Even in those memories, the book inspired fear, not in his younger self, but in the adult Voldemort. It seduced me toward darkness, his lingering soul judged. Not as an excuse or denial, but as a hard-earned reflection from the older Voldemort on his younger choices. Could a mere book tempt the Dark Lord? At first, it sounded absurd, but from someone who had mastered the art of temptation himself, it was worth considering. I'll have to prepare thoroughly. Even if it's excessive, I can't risk an accident. Muttering to himself, Voldemort pulled a bracelet from a drawer, only a dozen beads, far fewer than his usual one. Impediment charm, impediment charm, impediment charm. He imbued each bead with the same spell, one by one, until all were charged. Then, taking further precautions, he cast a silent and invisible curse on the forbidden book before slowly opening Secrets of Time. The preface summarized the book's focus: experiments with repair curses on living bodies. But unlike Voldemort had expected, the author hadn't experimented cruelly on others. He'd used himself as the subject. A dwarf wizard, he had tried to use repair curses to control his body's abnormal growth. He had tested other spells, potions, even sought help from the Muggle world, but nothing worked. In the end, he turned to self-experimentation, driven by the heartbreak of being rejected by a witch he admired because of his height. At the end of the preface, a passage caught Voldemort's eye. Open quote, "I once cast curses on others to better understand magic, but one day I realized it was a mistake. In casting, we think of wand movements, spell rhythm, emotional modulation, but these are not the spell itself. Only by becoming the vessel of the spell can one truly know it, so I resolved to try something new." Close quote. A dialectical approach, perhaps a truly great experiment, Voldemort murmured, turning to the table of contents. The chapter titles were grim: Repairing Broken Fingers, Repairing Broken Toes, Repairing Broken Arms, Repairing Broken Ribs, Progressing from Extremities Inward, ending with Repairing an Injured Brain and Restoring a Fragmented Soul. No wonder it was forbidden. It was merciless. Voldemort shut the book briefly to check the author's name. Elfer Matthews. The name meant nothing to him. There was no biography, only the certainty that the man had been relentless. Restoring the soul remnants. That's exactly what I need. Seems this book suits me perfectly. He tried to flip to the final chapter, but the pages were magically bound. He would have to read in order. Without attempting to break the enchantment, he began with Chapter 1, Repairing Broken Fingers. On the left, dense text. On the right, a moving illustration of Matthews receiving a repair curse from another wizard. Nothing seemed unusual until Voldemort began reading. Open quote, "It was cruel, but I had good reason, so I broke my own finger with a stick to see how the repair curse would work." Close quote. The diary-like tone drew him in. Reading slowly, he reached the point where the author prepared to have a friend cast the repair curse on him. Nothing unusual so far. Voldemort glanced down at the new bracelet on his wrist and wondered if he should extend the impediment charm's duration. Finish this chapter first, he decided, his eyes fixed on the text. The pages detailed the spell's effects, from the initial pain to the healing, ending with the grotesque scar it left behind. It read like a careful experimental record, with nothing extraordinary at first glance. Then, as Voldemort glanced to the right side of the scene, multiple afterimages flickered across the screen. Simultaneously, he felt himself tipping forward, as if about to fall. He struggled to steady himself, but some strange force had control. Before he knew it, he collapsed face first into the book. Smack! When the illusion lifted, a sharp snap and stabbing pain shot through his fingers. Ah, damn, that hurts like hell! He realized he was shouting, but the voice wasn't his own. "Come on, my friend, help me with a repair spell," an unfamiliar voice said. In his vision appeared a wizard, a short figure looking up at him from below. The perspective felt disorienting, almost nauseating. "Have I entered the book?" Voldemort grimaced, the pain gnawing at him. He wasn't surprised. After all, forbidden books existed for a reason, and he had prepared for anything. "All right, hang in there." The wizard waved his wand, casting a repair spell. Its rhythm was unusual, longer syllables, slower, an ancient form of the charm. "Ugh, this hurts so much," by Merlin's beard. "Damn repair spell." The other voice cursed again, and Voldemort felt the pain pierce deep into his bones. His fingers and chest felt connected, needles stabbing through him. He focused on the broken finger. Slowly it began to grow, swelling as the bone expanded, the agony intensifying. "It's growing, Del, do you see? Height might still be possible." The figure yelled through the pain, a sycophant's excitement like no other. "I don't want to feel this anymore," Voldemort thought bitterly. "Please, make it stop." But the pain didn't relent. He couldn't leave the book and had no choice but to endure the torment, suffering alongside the crazed assistant through the entire process. The first bead on his bracelet cracked, triggering a protective curse. Huff, huff! Voldemort withdrew his consciousness from the book, breathing heavily to ease the lingering pain radiating through his fingers. He lifted his right hand. His palm trembled as if still racked with agony, but his fingers were intact. A cruel experiment. Why not just use legilimency on someone else? Far easier, he muttered inwardly, baffled by the world of sycophants. Once the trembling subsided, he prepared to open the second chapter, only to find the pages completely sealed, as if some prerequisite hadn't been met. Damn it, I have to endure everything before moving on. How merciless. Frustrated, he reached for his wand to dispel the binding enchantment, but stopped. Careless destruction might destroy the book's contents, and with it, the final knowledge he sought. He weighed the cost. First, the book would deepen his understanding of the repairing curse. Second, it contained knowledge on soul restoration. The suffering seemed justified, though heavy. He lifted the lingering curses from the bracelet and placed it in a drawer, resolved to face the ordeal alone. And so the painful journey continued. Shattered fingers, broken arms, crushed thigh bones. Mr. Matthews, you truly are merciless, Voldemort thought before drifting into sleep. Kneazle, you don't look well, Hagrid said, concerned. Don't worry about Malfoy. The headmaster's here. You have nothing to fear. He had come early that morning to sit beside Voldemort, offering comfort. At first, he thought it unnecessary, but now it was clear. His friend was genuinely troubled. I'm not afraid, Hagrid. I think I'm fine, Voldemort replied weakly, though his hand holding the fork trembled constantly. Oh my, what did Malfoy do that day? How dare he treat you like that? You're at Gringotts after all. Before Hagrid could continue, McGonagall's sharp voice cut in. Enough, Hagrid. Stop talking. Her stern rebuke silenced him. She looked at Voldemort with rare tenderness. I didn't realize this affected you so deeply, Kneazle. Is there anything I can do to help? Voldemort lifted his head helplessly. His expression was mistaken for grievance by the professors. He scanned their concerned faces and sighed deeply. There was no way to explain clearly. I don't think I'm afraid of this, he said. He saw doubt flicker in their eyes, but continued. But I must prepare, so I've been studying blood curses. That may have caused some harm to my body. He raised his arm, revealing a slight tremor from the upper arm down. Oh, blood curses, McGonagall sighed. I've asked the headmaster. He can't solve this. I don't think I can either. The other professors shook their heads helplessly, clearly at a loss. Have you thought about talking to vampires? Hagrid persisted. The headmaster could influence them, right? The professors exchanged exasperated glances. Vampires were beyond Hagrid's reach. I cannot, Hagrid, Voldemort said. Dumbledore appeared, easing the tension. Blood curses are deeply personal. Even vampires respect that. He glanced at Voldemort, who nodded. Besides, it's impossible to break unless Kneazle reaches some agreement with a vampire. Hagrid's eyes widened. The message was clear. Go fulfill that condition. It's complicated, Hagrid. Can we discuss this later? I'm hungry. Voldemort said, resigned. Lies would crumble under scrutiny, so silence was safest. All right, let's not disturb Kneazle. Dumbledore added, then reassured him. The board cannot override my decisions. Voldemort nodded firmly, trusting him. He saw exhaustion in Dumbledore's eyes, proof that Malfoy's actions had been effective. After that, no one else disturbed him, except Hagrid. Reluctantly, Voldemort ended breakfast early and walked with Hagrid outside for a long talk. After seeing Hagrid off, Voldemort encountered Hermione, who asked about his condition and the trembling in his hand. I'm fine, Hermione. Let's go to class, he replied. Today's early lesson was for first and second year Gryffindors. Following the alternating weekly schedule, his Friday classes varied. Otherwise, he wouldn't manage all his courses alone. Unlike yesterday's theory class, this time he led them toward the Forbidden Forest. The first and second year Gryffindors would be the first to experience the wonders of the Maple Leaf Training Grounds. Outside Hagrid's hut at the Maple Leaf Training Grounds, Voldemort gave his assistant clear orders. Truman, you'll be in charge of letting them in. Keep them in order. Then he turned to Hagrid. You and I will head inside to patrol the grounds. Make sure none of the kids get seriously hurt. No problem, Kettler, Hagrid rumbled. He glanced at Voldemort's right hand. Though the trembling had stopped, he still looked worried. I'm fine, Hagrid. It's healed, Voldemort said, sounding a little impatient. It wasn't healed. The damage from last night's forbidden book still lingered. Occasional tremors, the dull ache gnawing at his mind. It would take time to fade. If anyone gets injured, serious or not, call out immediately. Hagrid and I will be right there, Voldemort told the students. No problem, Professor. When do we start? The young Gryffindors asked, barely hiding their excitement. Now! Teams were formed quickly, 4 per group, with some having an extra 1 or 2 members if needed, but never fewer than 4. Voldemort and Hagrid entered the training grounds first, Truman admitting the students in batches. Stay hidden and observe from a distance, Voldemort reminded Hagrid. Don't let them spot us. Following the first group in, Voldemort slipped along the left side of the training base. At last, 5 days into the term, the Maple Leaf Training Grounds were officially open. At a fork in the path, Parvati Patil stood nervously. Behind her were her dorm mates, Hermione Granger, Lavender Brown, and a timid second-year witch. Let Hermione decide, Lavender said. She's the confident one. Hermione swallowed, staring at the 3 narrow paths, left, middle, right, unsure. She glanced at the second year for guidance, but the girl was hiding behind Lavender and clearly had no intention of helping. The middle, Hermione decided. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. We should get through quickly. The others nodded and followed her lead. Hermione had her wand out, odd considering they'd only been at school 5 days. I heard from upper years that first and second year grounds aren't that bad, Hermione said as they walked. The creatures here aren't aggressive. The real danger is from living plants. She was mid-sentence when something rustled past on their right, darting through the branches. Ah! The girls jumped aside, hearts racing, but nothing attacked. Don't be so jumpy, Hermione chided. We're Gryffindor. Parvati and Lavender nodded, but the second year was staring at Hermione's feet. Ah! Hermione screamed. Vines had wrapped around her ankles, binding her feet so she couldn't move. The same vines snared the others, climbing their legs as they shouted for help. "Girls, stop screaming." Voldemort appeared, his voice calm. "Just leg-wrap vines, harmless pranksters, stay still." Only Hermione managed to quiet herself. The others kept shrieking. Voldemort raised his wand. "Flames, blaze!" Fire shot from the tip, licking close to the vines. They recoiled instantly, releasing their captives. "Most plants fear fire," Voldemort explained. "You don't even have to burn them, just get close." Hermione nodded, pale and trembling but listening closely. The others barely heard him. "Before we go back, don't tell anyone what you've seen here. The Maple Leaf training grounds are strictly off-limits for discussion." He led them back. It hadn't been far. They'd been caught almost immediately. "What was that invisible thing?" Hermione asked once she'd calmed down. "If we hadn't been startled, we could have gone further." "That's for you to figure out," Voldemort said, amused by her persistence. He was sure she'd be in the library by nightfall, researching. Back at the fork, they found Harry's group with Hagrid, staring at them in surprise. "We hadn't even left yet, and they—" Hagrid trailed off. "They're first years," Voldemort said lightly. He noticed the second year's bowed head, but offered no comfort. She'd handled danger worse than the first years. Not everyone was suited for defense against the dark arts. "Hagrid, you need to hide better," Voldemort told him. "I'm just too tall." "Harry saw me," Hagrid admitted. "Learn the disguise charm. It's essential for you." "I'm trying, but it's hard," Hagrid muttered. Voldemort didn't push the point. "All right, boys. Hagrid will follow, but he'll only step in if you give up. Go." Harry's group debated. Harry wanted the middle path. Ron thought it was too dangerous. Voldemort lost patience and left them to it, slipping into the woods to wait for the next group. Harry's team chose left. Next came 4 second-year Gryffindor boys. "I like the left side," their leader said, and the rest followed without question. Before long, they caught up to Harry's group, stopped in front of a locked door. "Alohomora." The second-year leader cast the unlocking charm with ease, but now came the question of who would pass first. "Duel," Voldemort said, stepping out of the underbrush. "One-on-one or group fight. Winner moves on, loser withdraws." After a pause, Harry and the second-year leader stepped forward. "Cormac McCragen." The boy introduced himself with a bow. "Harry Potter," Harry replied nervously. "Disarm your weapon." Cormac attacked immediately. Harry tried a levitation charm, but a red curse hit him mid-spell, sending his wand flying. Harry's group withdraws. Cormac's group proceeds. Hagrid escorted the defeated team away. Voldemort melted back into the shadows, following Cormac's team. A total wipeout for Gryffindor's first years, 5 boys and 3 girls. The girls had at least made it past the first turn. The boys hadn't even cleared the first door. "I like this rule," Cormac said cheerfully. "Winner moves forward, loser quits. It's fair." "It's fair, and you beat Harry Potter," one of his friends said proudly. Cormac smirked. "Sure, that's nice, but if it had been Malfoy, I'd be even happier." The group immediately burst into conversation, and it was obvious that Malfoy was becoming increasingly unpopular with the Gryffindors. Voldemort stayed hidden in the shadows, thinking about the leader's name. He remembered seeing it in a book, but couldn't place it, until Kaomike waved his wand like a conductor's baton, and the memory clicked. This was a member of the Slug Club, a former substitute Quidditch goalkeeper, who had accidentally hit Harry with a stray ball, causing him to fall and crack his skull. Harry Kexing? Fate's design, perhaps? Voldemort mused silently. If so, recruiting him as a Death Eater could be useful against Harry. Of course, that was wishful thinking. Gryffindor rarely produced Death Eaters, except for the dwarf, Peter Pettigrew. Lost in thought, Voldemort followed Kaomike's squad. Along the way, they encountered several small traps, all deftly disarmed by Kaomike. Having earned Slug Club membership and Horace Slughorn's approval, Kaomike clearly had skill. The path is tangled with bindweed, but for second years it's hardly a challenge, Voldemort noted as they moved through the training grounds. So far, no aggressive magical creatures? Is this really the level for first and second years? Before he could finish, a shadow shot down from the branches and leapt onto him. "What is that?" he shouted. Trying to shake off the small black mass, the creature darted wildly across him like a snake or rat. Squeak, squeak, the black creature squeaked twice. Kalmaki prepared to fend it off, but it hopped onto another student and resumed its search. It's a niffler, damn it. Watch your coin purses, Kalmaki muttered, pulling out his wallet. Now empty. It's so itchy. Get off me. I have no money. A second-year boy twisted and stomped, trying to shake the niffler, but it ignored him, scrambling instead in search. Ah! The boy tripped and fell to the roadside, where the bindweed quickly wrapped him up. The niffler fled before being caught, apparently scared off by the plant. Don't panic. They're afraid of fire. Just wait, Kalmaki said calmly, raising his wand to cast a fire-starting spell. Suddenly, the fallen student screamed. Something bit me. His eyes glazed over, his body went limp, and drool began trickling from his mouth. What's happening to him? Kalmaki? A terrified student asked. Kalmaki cautiously approached, wand at the ready. Amid the bindweed, he spotted a red flower shaped like lips smeared with bright pigment. It's a lipsole bloom. Damn. I heard from my family that its toxin can turn someone into a fool. He scanned the area, apparently seeking help. If your team surrenders, I can handle this. Voldemort appeared calmly at just the right moment. Professor, it's the lipsole bloom. Will he be okay? Someone asked anxiously. We surrender. Flames blaze forth. Voldemort immediately cast the fire-starting spell, burning away the bindweed and freeing the entrance student. Of course he'll be fine. This is a modified variety by Professor Sprout, hallucinogenic, but not soul-damaging, Voldemort explained, then cast a featherlight charm on the dazed student and had the others carry him. He needs to see Madame Pomfrey in the infirmary. She can help him, he said, leading them toward the exit. At the junction near the three broomsticks, a squad of second-year girls waited. Seeing their carried classmate, they gasped. Truman stepped forward. Professor, what's wrong with him? Bitten by a lipsole bloom. Take him to Madame Pomfrey. She already has the antidote. Is this the last group? Voldemort asked. Yes, the previous group has gone in. Before Truman could finish, the earlier group returned with Hagrid. They too had failed. Then, ladies, let's move out, Voldemort said, looking at the final group of 4. All right, Professor, they answered nervously. The lead girl boldly took the right path, keeping the group away from the left corridor. Voldemort told Hagrid to take the others back first and follow the last group down the right corridor. In truth, this path was the most dangerous, but the kids didn't know it. They moved along the narrow trail without incident, gradually relaxing and chatting cheerfully. Maybe we picked the safest route, the lead girl said, quickening her pace. Luck is part of strength, after all. Professor Quirrell might have even designed a straight path all the way to the end. The other girls nodded in agreement. But no, Voldemort followed silently, thinking the opposite. The path only looked safe to lower their guard. Their chatter had already drawn danger close. A blue light streaked toward them. Speed up! We might finish today if we're lucky, the lead witch said, hurrying forward. Then the blue light struck her, lifting her briefly into the air. Ah, she screamed, eyes glazing over. Katie, what's wrong? The other witches asked, panicked. I think something stung me, my head's spinning. Katie clutched at her companions. I feel like I'm floating away. What's happening? They held her down as she hovered, one shouting, Professor, we surrender. Obscuro. Voldemort appeared and immediately cast a spell at the blue light. But it moved too fast, erratically. His first spell missed, and the light darted toward him with an electric buzz. Ah! The girls shrieked. Swish, swish, swish! Voldemort cast multiple Obscuro spells. The light slammed into one and stopped. It was a foot-long glowing jade blue, a rare ill-will beetle, common in Australia but unusual in England. What is that? Katie clung to her friends, turning to Voldemort. That's for you to discover on your own, he said. You're dizzy, and your floating will last a while, but it's nothing serious. Do you want to stay for class or go to the infirmary? Really, I'll be okay? Katie asked, eyes wide. She still drifted slightly upward. Nothing serious. You'll recover soon, Voldemort reassured her. Oh, then I'll stay for class. It feels amazing, like riding an invisible, unruly broomstick. Quite fun, she said, gripping her friend's arm. Voldemort shrugged and led the way, silently murmuring pentakill in his mind. At Hogwarts, the 5 first and second-year teams were completely wiped out in the Maple Leaf training grounds. Chapter 55, Gryffindor's Dark Defense, Dare to Strike. Katie, how did you do that? Cormac asked, curious, as he caught Katie's hand, tugging it down before lifting it again. Katie didn't mind. She seemed just as amused as he was. Other students gathered, watching with interest. Some even asked to try pulling her hand themselves, and Katie happily agreed. It turned into a lively little game for the younger Gryffindors, laughter and chatter filling the air, until Voldemort's voice cut through. Fun, isn't it? He smiled faintly. But I should warn you, too many bites from this magical creature, and you'll end up floating in the air forever. Yes, forever. Katie's smile faltered. A little floating was one thing, but forever? Professor, I don't think I will. You won't, Voldemort assured her. One bite's harmless, but too many and you'll drift endlessly. Next time you see it, run. Don't try to fight. It might cost you your freedom. No one seemed keen to test that theory, and Voldemort noted with satisfaction the lack of mischief in their eyes. Now, he said, this lesson was meant to show you the purpose of dark defense. What pleased me most today was the duel between Cormac and Harry. He gave the boys a nod. Winning or losing isn't important. What matters is learning to fight. Dark defense is about protecting yourselves from your own kind. Dark creatures rarely use dark magic. The remark didn't stop the lingering glances toward Harry, who had lost. His cheeks flushed as he stared at the grass. Cormac, Voldemort said, tell us what you learned. Yes, Professor. Cormac stood, casting a glance at Harry. To be honest, I don't think my win was entirely fair. Everyone knows Harry's only been learning magic for 5 days. He doesn't even know a full spell yet. I didn't ask you to defend Harry, Voldemort said, displeased. I asked what you gained. Oh, sorry, Professor. Cormac dipped his head, embarrassed. It was my first duel, and I realized that choosing the right spell is crucial. That's what I learned. Voldemort gave a curt nod, then turned to Harry. And you? Me? Harry blinked, startled. If I had the chance again, I'd move faster. I'm not very good with the levitation charm, but speed was my only hope. Voldemort nodded again and motioned for them to sit. He stood on the grass, scanning the group. I asked for 2 year groups from the same house to attend together. You all know why? He didn't wait for an answer. It's because I want to teach you battle strategies unique to your house. The children's eyes lit up. Even Hermione, who usually had little interest in dueling, leaned forward, wide-eyed at the word unique. Professor, please. Don't keep us waiting, Cormac urged. Voldemort gave a slight smile. I think Harry already gave you the answer. Everyone glanced at Harry, who looked just as puzzled as they did. Professor, do you mean act first? Hermione asked, raising her hand. Exactly, Voldemort said, but there was no praise for Gryffindor. He never indulged in that. How should Gryffindor bravery show itself in battle? In my opinion, the truest form is the courage to strike first. The students straightened at the words Gryffindor bravery, though many still didn't quite connect it to acting first. In a fight, the one who acts first has more options, Voldemort explained. It also forces you to adapt quickly, while waiting and defending traps you in hesitation and confusion. They sat quietly, considering his words. Hesitation and confusion. If you know the process of casting a spell, you'll know how dangerous they are. He noticed the understanding in Cormac's eyes. Go on, tell them. Professor Flitwick says confidence makes spells easier to cast. Hesitation or confusion lowers your chances, Cormac said. Correct. Voldemort gestured for him to sit. Acting first also means you're prepared, your wand work sharpens, and your readiness improves. The nods around the circle showed the point had landed. Any other benefits? Katie asked, still drifting slightly in midair. Of course. If you saw my duel with Snape, you'd notice we stayed calm the whole time, Voldemort said. The memory lit the students' faces. Truman's among them, now that he was back. Making a habit of striking first builds combat experience. Only with enough experience can you remain calm under fire. Snape, for example, took several curses directly because it was the clever choice. Those who'd seen the fight nodded, while others looked regretful to have missed it. All right, enough talk. On your feet, wands ready. Be brave enough to act. The students stood, pairing off under the eyes of Voldemort, Hagrid, and Truman. Be brave, they repeated to themselves before launching their spells. The second years managed reasonably well. They had more spells to draw from. The first years, less so. Most defaulted to the levitation charm, and most failed. Wingardium Leviosa! Hermione's clear voice rang out, and Neville watched in alarm as his wand floated out of his grip. He froze, panic taking over. Well done, Hermione. Neville, are you giving up already? Voldemort asked. Professor, my wand's gone. Neville stammered, scrambling to retrieve it. But Hermione flicked her wand again, this time targeting Neville's feet, sending him tripping as he ran. Using magic is always the first choice for wizards, Voldemort said, but can fists not hurt someone? The young Gryffindors froze. Fists? That was hardly the wizardly way. Yet take this, Ron shouted, charging at Harry. He fully embraced the idea of striking first, abandoning any thought of grabbing his wand. Soon, others joined in, and the match transformed. Aside from a handful of second years still casting spells, most of the students resorted to hand-to-hand combat. Voldemort nodded with satisfaction, while Hagrid and Truman were left completely stunned. The elegance of wizardry had vanished, replaced by raw, chaotic brutality. Was this really how wizards were supposed to fight? Strike first. Professor, this isn't what you taught us. September fate. Dear readers, be bold and strike first. If you can vote, do. If not, just hit like. Chapter 56, Hufflepuff's Dark Defense. Winning through combat skills. Kettler, maybe you should try a different approach. They're still young, Flitwick said anxiously, glancing toward the Gryffindor table. Voldemort looked over. A group of battered Gryffindors sat together, bruised but still excitedly discussing their battles. The most enthusiastic was Neville Longbottom, who had scored multiple victories, not just against Hermione, but even giving Harry Potter a thorough beating. Encouraged by Voldemort, this shy, chubby boy had unleashed a surprisingly fierce fighting spirit. As for Hermione, her hair was more disheveled than ever, her face bruised and swollen, tears still clinging to her cheeks. She cast troubled glances toward Voldemort, clearly feeling wronged. I was only letting them get a taste of it. This won't happen often, Headmistress, Voldemort said, apparently addressing Flitwick, but clearly speaking to Professor McGonagall, who had been giving him sharp looks. Won't happen often? Flitwick widened his eyes incredulously. You mean this could happen again? Voldemort sighed, trying to explain before McGonagall and Flitwick lost their patience. Gryffindor gentlemen wield a wand in one hand and a sword in the other. That's tradition, isn't it? His remark left both professors momentarily speechless. They wanted to object, but couldn't articulate a solid reason. Times have changed, Kettler, McGonagall finally said. Dueling with swords is rare. I don't think it's necessary. Hogwarts doesn't allow firearms, Voldemort interjected, a hint of frustration in his voice. Otherwise, I'd teach them to use pistols. That would be a more effective fighting method. McGonagall blinked repeatedly, but said nothing. She understood guns, cannons, planes, even missiles. World War II's memory lingered even in the wizarding world. But what was Kettler trying to do? Is this because of Muggle research? Dumbledore asked, appearing just then. So, you want the children to understand Muggle combat methods? No, Voldemort shook his head firmly. I just want them to learn how to fight. That's the essence of dark defense. To be brave enough to strike first? Dumbledore asked thoughtfully. Voldemort nodded, offering no argument. Good idea. Reminds me of what you said in your interview. Looks like you're putting those ideals into practice. Yes, they must learn to fight so they can protect themselves, Voldemort confirmed. Dumbledore nodded, showing no hostility, just a trace of approval. Voldemort thought the headmaster might see him as preparing students for future battles on the side of the Order of the Phoenix. Naturally, he had no intention of fighting the Order directly. Why would the wizarding world, with so few wizards, destroy itself? Any ruler with sense wouldn't allow such foolish infighting. Then carry on. Let's see the results, Dumbledore said, his support silencing McGonagall's objections. You should still be cautious. Flitwick whispered after Dumbledore left. Don't actually harm the students, and don't make them overly aggressive. Voldemort nodded, though his thoughts ran elsewhere. The afternoon's first class was for the Hufflepuffs, divided into 7 small groups, and the result was another total defeat. You performed better than Gryffindor, Voldemort said, prompting cheers from the Hufflepuffs. He quickly added a clarification to keep them humble. That's because your head of house is responsible for many of these magical plants. You clearly know them better. The Hufflepuffs remained cheerful and enthusiastic, content as always. All right, let's get back on track. Let's talk about your combat style. Finally addressing their favorite topic, the young badgers straightened up, eagerly waiting for Voldemort's lecture. At lunch, they'd been debating their house's fighting style, but strike first clearly wasn't their way. If anything, it made them even more curious about what set